made this video to document the replacement of a differential oil seal on my 2006 Range Rover Supercharged. It has the 4.2 liter Jag engine in it, and it is a US market vehicle. It was originally made with a diff casing that had a coating on the inside of it that apparently has a negative impact on the life of the oil seals. The differential has 3 oil seals. It has one for the pinion, one for the left side of the diff in the US, the driver's side, and another one on the right side, which is kind of part of the engine sump as far as I can tell. On my vehicle, when I got it at 104,000 miles, the driver's side seal was leaking, and since then I've been keeping it topped up. When I make these videos, I am really making them for someone like me who just wants to be able to have video or pictures of the process as it unfolds. Not necessarily, I don't really need to watch anybody on video, swinging a wrench. So that's what I've done. The only parts that you're going to need for this job, if you choose to take it on, is a oil seal from Land Rover. I kind of recommend doing an original part, and the axle shaft nut and caliper bolts will also need to be replaced if you want to do it to Land Rover spec. This job I've been putting off. It turned out to be a lot easier than I expected it to be. So there you have it. Thank you. So this is the Range Rover on the left, and I've just got it started on the next project on this vehicle. I've got it pretty much sorted, and from when I bought it a couple years ago, 122K at the moment. Bought it with 104. One of the many things that can go sideways with this 2006 full-size supercharged machine is, I guess when they built these differentials, they used a kind of funky casing coating. From what I've read, I can't really tell if it's what they've used on the outside or the inside. But this one leaks like a proverbial sieve. From what I can tell, it is purely leaking from this driver's side oil seal right here. The passenger side and the pinion oil seal appear to be, pretty reasonably dry. Obviously, for me, this isn't that big of a deal because I've been keeping it topped up, and it, needs to be looked at when I'm driving it a lot every couple of weeks in order to keep up with things. So I finally decided I've got a little bit tired of sticking gallons of Royal Purple in this thing. So I'm going to replace this single oil seal right here. The way to do that is to essentially remove the drive shaft. Drive shaft is held in by some funky circlips apparently, so that's going to be fun. What's going to happen here is that lovely Brembo caliper is going to have to come off in the brakes, and this nut right here is going to need to be removed. I've kind of considered just dropping. I think you can get enough space by essentially undoing the hub assembly from the suspension here, from the air strut, and get enough to kind of pull the thing out to replace the seal. But I think I'm gonna pull the entire shaft. It just seems to me it will give me a little bit more room. A little bit nervous about the circlips. Everyone talks about them being hard to get in and out. My CV boots are in really good shape, so I'm not thinking I need to kind of do anything to those. So there you have it. Started the project. Just get down here a bit. I've already broken the tie rod end off of the hub, so that's kind of got that ready to go. That came off fairly easily with my handy dandy device, this thing. I had to tighten it pretty far and then kind of a little bit further with a impact hammer, and I tightened it up and looked at it for 20 seconds, and then it just popped of its own accord. So pretty tight, but not too bad. Again, the fun is going to be getting that drive shaft out of the differential. And as I already kind of mentioned, there's not a heck of a lot of clearance here. With, you know, particularly if the drive shaft isn't out of the picture. So that's my plan. This nut here requires 311 foot-pounds to tighten it down, which is pretty crazy. Okay, I'm jumping pretty far ahead here, but the steps up to now have been really super simple, really, which is to remove the brake pads and caliper and tie them up out of the way, which is the first step. Then jacked the car up and drained the diff oil out of it. Also removed the filler plug just because it's kind of in the way. Don't know if that's visible, but there you go. Disconnect the air shock from the wheel hub here. These guys are, everything here is tightened down really well. Getting the nut off the end of the half shaft was challenging. Took quite a bit of time with my impact wrench to get that off, but it finally let loose. And whoever had done this before, I noticed there's kind of like a little bit of rust in there. I don't know if this is ever, I don't think this has ever been off, but I will definitely be adding a little bit of anti-seize to that. Ended up having to persuade the spline shaft out of the wheel hub using a persuader, which is there on the floor. So next steps are going to be what I've been most concerned about, which is to actually disconnect the half shaft from the differential here. I've already kind of dug up under there with a lever, and I can totally see the spring action that's kind of holding things in. So I'll be working on that next. I have a CV joint separator bar that I have had to adapt. It needed to be ground at the ends to get a better kind of screwdriver-like ends of the fork. It may not actually work because I think that without getting the shaft off and really seeing what's going on, I think though that I'm gonna have to do the kind of basically 2 screwdriver roll. But again, you almost could pull it out by hand. I swear, it doesn't look that complicated. Okay, so getting the half shaft out actually has been the easiest part of the job. As I said earlier, I slightly modified this $25 CV joint separator, round it down a bit. I just kind of put it in here, and I didn't even have to hammer it in. I just kind of gradually pushed it back and it just came right out. So that part was pretty easy. We can see here I have the seal out. Really not much to report. There's no apparent damage to the seal, which I would have kind of liked to have seen in a way, but it does seem a little rubbery. I ended up using a large pry bar, and I ended up kind of like this angle was about the best to get the old seal out. That was after trying to drill it and a couple of other things. So, big pry bar in the right place. Here is the replacement seal. It's kind of interesting. Sorry about the shadow here. There's this red protector. So, presumably you put the shaft through, and then once it's in there, get the protector out of there. So that's kind of cool. The rubber on this definitely feels a little more solid. But this isn't that gooey. Just here's the seal on the left that came out of the Range Rover. Generally not seeing any significant problems with it. Here's the seal that I intend to replace it with, and it has the red protective device. The manual is a little unclear here. It says don't remove this device until you have the half shaft installed. I'm kind of interpreting that as put the splines through and then remove that. Additionally, I'm going to use a little bit of sticky red grease to secure the spring in there as well as I can. I'm using just generic red grease here. I think Land Rover likes you to use Shell, but from my own experience, it has to do with it being nice and sticky. I'm also going to use a bit on the lip of the differential before we get this installed. Okay, I have the seal in the diff. As you can see, it's a little bit kind of tight in there. How I did this is I used a little bit of red grease on the external side of the oil seal and started it by using a piece of irrigation pipe. I really hate using stuff like this because it always seems to go easily sideways, but I think to start things, using that, and I had a piece of wood to kind of just get it started. That piece of pipe is what is that? I think it's like a 2-inch internal. It actually 2.5-inch pipe, if you care. And then for the more fine work of getting the seal into play and straight, I just used a combination of extensions to lightly tap it into place. So this seal protector, I've already checked the shafts kind of run through that, so what I'm going to do is like open it up here, and I'm assuming it's easy to pull out. Almost too easy. So I'll put the shaft in and then break that away. Of course, I'm going to make sure that this is pretty well lubricated before I fit it in. Just a quick note, I was looking at the circlip here, and it's almost like non-existent. I don't think anyone should have any trouble getting it in and out. Okay, so the half shaft is past the lip of the oil seal. As you can see, I still have the protector in there, but the splines that might nick the oil seal are now out of the way. So I'm going to try and get that red plastic protector out of there. So at this stage, we have pretty much everything back together. The one thing I will say is that I cannot imagine doing this job without undoing the axle, the half shaft nut. You just don't have enough room. The shaft slides in there fairly easily, but again, I would say that people who have trouble with it aren't lining up real well. It has to be kind of coaxed in there and lined up well. The most difficult part of this reassembly was actually getting the axle shaft, the half shaft, through the splines into the wheel hub assembly. It was really tight in there. So this is the protector ring. I had opened it, so initially it sits in the O-ring like this. You put the so you open it up, you put the half shaft through here. Once the splines are through, then you just pull real hard on this and it basically is stressed to come apart. So have the differential drain plug installed with some thread sealant to the recommended torque of 40 foot-pounds. While we're talking foot-pounds, this guy here is 75 foot-pounds. These two here are actually pretty high up there. It was like 184 foot-pounds. And the two bolts that hold the Brembo brake caliper on are set to, I think, 48 foot-pounds and then a further 90 degrees. They are Land Rover recommends that you chuck them away and replace them. I presume they're stretch bolts. So just for good measure, I have someone replace these for now. And I also, speaking of replacements, I have torqued this guy down to about as far up as my impact wrench will go. It's on there pretty tight, about where it was before, but I am going to replace that with a brand new nut, which I have, but I am waiting on an adapter for my torque wrench that will go up to 311 foot-pounds. But for now, I feel pretty comfortable that that's not going anywhere. Land Rover, in a logic that I don't quite understand, unlike most differentials, there is a, there's a filler hole which is open there, and then around here, under here, is the drain hole. Most diffs, you just fill them out fill them up until they start weeping differential oil from the fill hole. According to the Land Rover manual, if you do that, you've overfilled your differential. What the impact of that is a little less than clear to me. But given that I'm trying to do all this right, I measured out 1.6 pints. It's about 24.5 fluid ounces US, or around 75 milliliters, I guess. Yeah, 3/4 of a liter, and stuck that in an empty bottle of Royal Purple, which I will now go ahead and get into the differential. So I'm filling it up to Land Rover's recommended spec. Alright, so the 0.75 liters of differential oil are in there. Both the plugs are in and sealed. Only thing that cleaned up some of the oil that was spraying out of there, and on the subframe, and also just the covers. Last thing I have to do is install the brake pads, and I'll be doing that next. Project complete.